Welcome to Creating Wealth with Jason Hartman, president of Platinum Properties Investor Network in Newport Beach, California. During this weekly program, Jason is going to tell you some really exciting things that you probably haven't thought of before, or a new slant on real estate, fresh new approaches to America's best investment that will enable you to create more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk. He's been a successful investor for 20 years and currently owns properties in 9 states. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to financial freedom through real estate. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman.
Good afternoon. This is Jason Hartman with Platinum Properties Investor Network, broadcasting today's podcast number 18 from the OC here in Orange County, California. Today I would like to talk about inflation, but really I'd like to talk about leverage, but leverage specifically as it relates to the concept and the reality of inflation. When you use leverage or borrowed money, there are many, many benefits. The prudent, proper use of leverage. A very powerful tool, could be a destructive tool. Some people get themselves into trouble with it. But when you use it the right way, especially when investing in real estate, it is an incredibly powerful tool. The main benefits, although there are many others, and in our other podcasts you hear us talk about leverage, is to reduce risk and increase return on investment. However, this podcast is specifically geared toward inflation. In fact, I call it the Great Inflation Payoff. Now, if you ever have a chance to attend one of our seminars or meet or talk with one of our investment counselors, they will be glad to run some phenomenal inflation calculations for you. And these will show you how much benefit, that's right, I said it right, benefit you are actually getting from inflation as a real estate investor. So let me just say this to make it simple. Think about this. If you were to purchase 6 single-family homes and the aggregate value of those single-family homes was $1 million, and if you were to put 5% down on those properties, assuming you could qualify based on 5% down, your loan balances would be $950,000. Think about this. If inflation is 4%, in 1 year, if you've paid down no principal whatsoever, your loan balance reduced just because of inflation to just $912,000. Essentially, inflation paid off, if you will, $38,000 of your loan balance for you. This is what we call the Great Inflation Payoff. Borrowed money offers those 2 great benefits, reducing your risk and increasing your returns. But better than all of those is the benefit of inflation, because better to borrow money today and pay it back later than to pay money back today. And real estate has some especially beneficial features with inflation, because what happens, think about it, our rental properties, the loans on them, the debt on them, is paid back by our tenant rather than by us, or at least as much as possible the tenant pays off our loan balances for us. So more on this later. I'd like to just play for you part of a recent live seminar where I talk about the Great Inflation Payoff and some of these benefits of inflation. Now also, you have to understand that since you cannot see the visual aids being presented, you may have a question or two that is apparent and obvious to the live audience. So just give any of our investment counselors a call. They'll be glad to give you visual aids or explain things in more detail to you. And I will be back at the end of this podcast to tell you more about the inflation payoff and just sort of wrap this up. Thanks for listening, and let's tune in to a recent live seminar. Now let's talk again about inflation. If you go onto Google and type in inflation calculator, you can find these all over the internet. These are just 2 screenshots of inflation calculators that I found typing that into Google. So, remember, I asked you earlier today, would you rather have $100,000 today or $100,000 in 10 years? And everybody said today they'd rather have the money. And then I asked you, would you rather pay $100,000 today or pay it in 10 years? You all said, I'll pay later, take it today. Right answer, definitely. If you have a $100,000 mortgage on your property, and say it's an interest-only loan, we're not paying the principal down, it's just interest only, and it's a 10-year loan. If you believe, which you'd be crazy to believe it, but if you believe that inflation is only around 4% a year, as the government would have you believe, then after 10 years, if your loan is interest only, your statement still says $100,000 on it. But remember, you're paying in depreciated future dollars. So you're really only paying back $66,000 10 years from now. Better to pay later than to pay today. What if inflation is 8%? Personally, I think it's 10 to 12%. That's my opinion. $100,000, 8% inflation, 10 years go by, you're really only paying $43,000 in 2017 dollars. So debt works for you really well when you're the borrower. When you're the lender, debt really hurts you. When you buy bonds, you are the lender. When you buy bonds in a company or government bonds. That's why bonds are lousy, because I don't like being the lender. You know, Shakespeare a long time ago said, neither a borrower nor a lender be. Shakespeare was wrong. Be a borrower. Don't be a lender. Lender, no, lousy. I ask you a question about borrowing and lending. How many of you have ever loaned money to a friend or family member? Who was in control of that transaction, the lender or the borrower? Like I said, be the borrower. That's where you have control. So let's look at this example. Here's the bank. You go to the bank and you say, bank, I'm a real estate investor. I want to borrow money to buy this house. My name's Donald Trump. I got a comb over, and I'm going to buy this house. And I want you to loan me the money to buy this asset. But look, bank, I'm going to own the asset. You're just financing it for me. You're not going to get any of the tax benefits. You're not going to get any of the appreciation. All you're going to get is interest on the loan. And then I think, well, this sounds like a pretty good deal for me, the real estate investor, but the only problem is I got to pay the mortgage back. I've got to pay the loan back to the bank. What if I could avoid paying the loan back? Wouldn't that be neat? So what do? I rent the house out to Heather Locklear, one of my personal favorites. So Heather becomes my tenant, and I'm going to say, look, Heather, effectively, you're going to pay the bank back for me. But it gets better than this. I borrow money from the bank, say at 7.5% blended rate. What that means in the blended rate is if I get two loans to put minimum down payment, say I do 80% on my first loan, 15% on my second loan, 5% of my own cash down. The blended rate, okay, is the blending of the two loans. The 80% loan is a larger balance at maybe 6.75%, for example. And the second loan is a more risky loan for the bank to make. So they're going to charge me a higher interest rate because they're in second position when it comes to collecting. So they might say, well, I want it 12%, but it's only a small amount of money. It's only 15% of the purchase price. So the blending of the two might come out to 7.5%. So that's the effective blended rate. All right? So I pay the bank, or really Heather Locklear pays the bank, in depreciated future dollars. Okay? And the asset historically appreciates faster than the rate of inflation. Now, most people see how they win the game in real estate this way, but they don't see how they win the game in real estate this way. You don't win one way, you win two ways, by borrowing money. The problem is, the bank isn't stupid. They understand inflation. I mean, how many MBAs are working in any bank? Lots of them, right? They went to school, business school, they learned about inflation. So they know this is out there. But they think inflation is only 4%, like the government tells us all, right? But they also realize that, look, if we want our money not to depreciate, we've got to charge an interest rate higher than the rate of inflation to offset that. So we might loan the money out at 7.5%, believing inflation is 4%, so our margin effectively is 3.5%. That's our profit to the bank.